JSC interviewing candidates for positions on the Constitutional Court. 8 candidates for 2 positions on the court. You can imagine the range of questions and cases they have to discuss. Matodzi Rachambelani is a director at Shiveva Gwina Rambachalani Incorporated, an attorney. Matodzi, good afternoon to you. It really seems like an impossible question. What do you look for in a judge of the Constitutional Court? You really want some of the best thinkers in our society.
Indeed, Stephen, you require people of experience, and that's why it's a tradition that people qualify to become judges when they've been in a legal practice for tens of years, if not double decades.
We see a cross-section of experience. I mean, just to look at 3 of the candidates, right? There's a former CEO of the Human Rights Commission, Judge Jody Collipin. Judge Mohaba Molamela was one of the first women attorneys in the Free State. I can imagine what her first working years were like in the Free State. Judge David Unterholter has a father who was himself famous in law. David Unterholter has also been a professor of law before he became a judge and a well-known advocate. I mean, these are people really from vastly different parts of our society.
Indeed, Stephen, and I think it's good that the diversity is that wide, because as you may have noted in the recent past, the Constitutional Court is starting to be faced with unconventionally constitutional issues. In the recent past, it's having to deal with contempt of court. There's been a number of business-related cases where people challenge the Competition Commission. So someone like David Unterholter, with his experience in competition law and commercial law, would come in handy. But I think it just shows that we've got a pool of talent. Everybody in that list is highly regarded.
There's an interesting conversation, and Julius Malema, he's the leader of the EFF, but he's also a member of the Judicial Service Commission. He was asking one candidate who's an advocate and not a judge, why should we appoint you if you're not actually a sitting judge? And this person was making the point that the Constitution suggested that actually not everyone should be sitting judges. I mean, it's an interesting point to make, the idea that someone who goes to become a judge on the Constitutional Court isn't a sitting judge when they're appointed, doesn't have experience on the bench.
Indeed, Stephen, but I think if you're referring to Advocate Dodson, who does have experience as a judge of the Land Claims Court, I think he was in the Land Claims Court for about 5 years. But if it is about anyone else who hasn't sat as a judge, the requirement is really experience in legal practice. And, I think it makes for interesting assessment for the members of the commission to assess their experience, notwithstanding the fact that one was not on the bench. They can look at their other experiences in the practice.
How important is diversity? And I'm talking, I suppose, about identity and particularly gender. I mean, we don't have nearly as many women as we have men practicing as advocates at the moment or as senior counsel. And you see this reflected in the Constitutional Court, where there are just a lot more men than there are women. I mean, surely in our society we can't really accept that. Look,
I mean, it's a long-standing accusation that the legal profession is exclusive boys' club, and one has to acknowledge that many women find it difficult to climb up the ranks, and I think that deprives that pool of judges, because there aren't enough practitioners. But I think there are strong indications that the picture is improving. There's a fair number at the SCA. The judge president is female, and I think even in this current crop, there's a good number. So I think, the JSC will need to look at that carefully.
Are we following the right process? You have a process of nominations. There's a shortlist. The Judicial Service Commission then conducts these hearings in public. Then they make a series of recommendations, and the President makes a final decision. Do you think that process works?
Look, I think it certainly works. It's a lot better than what we've seen, for example, in the U.S., where the President will nominate, and if the Senate is in support, then the judges go, and there's a lot of accusation there of partisanship and all of that. So in our case, you will see that the JSC is constituted of practicing lawyers, politicians, and people from the judiciary. And in my humble view, I think the system is reasonably, it works fairly well. And I think it's interesting that, about a week ago we tested, with the Judge Software case. The JSC is generally an employment agency, so to speak, but it has had to be a firing agency as well, and it will be interesting to see how that matter is wrapped up.
I mean, I don't know what the best way to appoint judges is. I mean, I, as a journalist, have sat in 3 days' worth of hearings for the Judicial Service Commission and for the, and interviewing something like 12 judges in that time, and they made their decisions within 20 minutes. I mean, that, to my mind, still, a long time later makes me think, well, that was really a politicized process. People knew what they were going to do long before they held their meeting. What I'm really getting to is we have these interviews. They're important. I think it's important that we see these interviews happening in public. But can you really get to know a judicial candidate in the course of an interview? Even if that interview is 5 hours, can you really know them?
Look, and I think that's why the nomination process comes in. The judges don't apply per se. They do have to accept the nomination, but they are nominated by people in the profession. And, those applications and nominations are quite extensive. They will go into the detail of, what the person's experience has been. So I think the interview process is really the last mile. By the time the commissioners sit there, they've seen extensive CVs. They've gone through some of the prominent judgments that the judges would have made for those who are already on the bench. So I think it's really the last end of a long process that would have long started.
Mthotsi Ratchumbalani, I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. An attorney, it's an important process that's underway. In fact, let's go live.